lie your way through COVID, Mr. Hancock?
No answer, although later the former health secretary would face a similar question in front of the inquiry. Outside, well, the bereaved had their own thoughts on this. Fran Hall, whose husband Steve died in October 2020, even broadened it out to encompass most of the government.
We instinctively knew that they were lying to us, but really seeing this as evidence now is devastating.
This part of the inquiry is examining decision-making and political governance, and Matt Hancock was at the time in charge of the lead department.
And the idea that it was wrong to suggest that we had a plan is completely false.
One of the themes running through today, and what will matter to these people lined up there and to those listening to the evidence, is, did Matt Hancock lie? It has been an accusation that has run through this inquiry so far that he didn't always tell the truth, that he was over-enthusiastic, that he would sometimes say things that needed to then be taken back. He, of course, today has denied all of this. Last December, Mr. Hancock's book, The Pandemic Diaries, was published. Today it came back to bite him when he claimed he'd told the Prime Minister they should lock down on March the 13th.
Your book says the account that follows has been meticulously pieced together from my formal papers, notes, voice memos, my communications, WhatsApps, we know from the press, and it records in 555 pages all the relevant, important events as you saw it concerning the coronavirus response. But there is no reference to you telling the Prime Minister to call for an immediate lockdown on the 13th of March.
I can remember it, and it came to light in looking forward to this inquiry.
Mr. Hancock,
a short break, and Mr. Hancock wanted to add to his statement.
You were questioning me about my call to the Prime Minister on the 13th of March and the fact that this wasn't in my book. Since I wrote that book, further evidence has come to light because I've been preparing for the inquiry. And if you look at INQ 000226628, you will, for instance, see an email from me to the Prime Minister on the 13th of March arguing for a suppression strategy.
In that email on the 13th of March, to which you wish us to have regard, do you use the word immediate or lockdown?
I don't have it in front of me.
Do you use the word immediate or lockdown?
I don't have it in front of me.
All right.
A tweet minutes later from the Prime Minister's former chief advisor, Dominic Cummings, saying Hancock flat out lying to inquiry. It is fair to say that there is no love lost between the two men. Indeed, Mr. Hancock went on today to describe Mr. Cummings as a malign actor who was making a power grab, all of which was to make a point that this impacted the smooth running of government. Mr. Hancock also denied he'd once said he should be the one to decide who should live or die if the NHS was overwhelmed. Whether it was or not remains a matter of dispute.
So right from the start, we've tried to throw a protective ring around our care homes.
But today, for the first time, Mr. Hancock admitted perhaps that ring was broken. And he added he understood why people felt so strongly about this.
Well, joining me now is Professor Christina Pargle at University College London. She's a member of the Independent SAGE Committee, which was active during COVID, and has canvassed opinion from NHS staff about the impact of the pandemic even today. Christina Pargle, Matt Hancock paints this picture of being sort of let down by a malign Dominic Cummings, as he puts it, who staged a power grab and shut him out of key meetings. Do you have any sympathy with him?
I mean, I think clearly there was a toxic environment in Downing Street throughout certainly that first year, but no one seems to take responsibility for it. So everyone's talked about it, but it doesn't seem to be anyone's fault. So do I think it was dysfunctional and do I think he was shut out of meetings? Yes, possibly. I'm not sure that's an excuse. I mean, he was Secretary of State for Health at the time.
Right, and you talk about that toxic culture, which has really come across very clearly today in the evidence. Was the scientific community aware of that kind of environment at all? Did you get wind of it during the pandemic?
I wasn't. I mean, you certainly got the impression that decisions were made a bit last minute, certainly on lockdown, and even, you know, the second lockdown and the third lockdown, again, there were these decisions that were made on the hoof, like schools opened for one day in January 2021. You might remember things kept changing in the run up to Christmas 2020. So you got the impression that the decision making was chaotic, but no, I don't think we knew it was as bad as it was.
And you talk about taking responsibility, and it, you know, he repeatedly denied lying, as he's been accused of several times throughout the inquiry. But he says his single greatest regret, as he put it, was that he didn't overrule advice on asymptomatic transmission. Do you think the scientists should take some responsibility for that as well?
I mean, I think it was pretty clear from Valence's testimony that actually they did advise that asymptomatic transmission was known about and quite significant from very early on. Like, we knew it was there. So I think what came out today was more that he didn't, like, I think Cummings tweeted about it as well, that Matt Hancock didn't understand the evidence on asymptomatic transmission. So I don't agree with Matt Hancock on that.
I mean, his point was that they didn't have the evidence until it was too late, and, you know, therefore he wishes he'd overruled them. I
think people knew about asymptomatic transmission by March 2020. They knew that it was certainly possible.
OK. I mean, did you... Obviously, a lot of it hinged on whether he was telling the truth or not. Did you find him a convincing witness or not today?
I mean, perhaps understandably, everyone is out to present the best version of themselves. I don't find it particularly convincing, particularly kind of claiming that he was pushing for a lockdown without any contemporaneous evidence as the Casey, you know, was pushing him on. I don't know that I can find anyone sympathetic when they say they threw a protective ring around care homes and quite knowingly discharged COVID positive patients into them. And Jenny Harry spoke about it yesterday as well. And I, you know, there were almost 30,000 excess deaths in care homes in 2 months in 2020. Like, I just don't know how that is forgivable.
And so, is the inquiry getting the answers to the question? Are they asking the questions and getting the answers that you want answered?
Some of them. I think for me, there's actually been a little bit too much emphasis on the dysfunction within government, because I'm not sure what the learning is from that. Because how can you protect against that in the next crisis? We don't know when the next crisis will happen. And so I'm hoping that when Baroness Hallett kind of pulls it all together, there will be some real recommendations for maybe how can you make crisis response more independent of government, or how do you make a crisis response more resilient to the characters that are in power at the time.
Professor Christina Pargle, thank you very much for joining us.